So, Cyrus, you have had an extraordinary life, and it's all the more interesting because you came from Iran. Lots of stuff happened during your life that we're going to get into, and you returned to Iran during the revolution, which is like just crazy, and came back to America, and you've gone, and you are now an American, of course, and have been. When did you become a citizen?
I became a citizen after law school before I went to Iran. So I became a citizen in, I think, 1975.
Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that. So you went back. Okay, well, we should probably take this one step at a time. But this is a spiritual journey that we're going to be talking about. But also, we're going to talk about Iran because I do want to hear your perspective and your insights on, of course, the events and the ongoing controversy, if you will, or belligerence between Iran and America, going back and forth, Iran and Israel, and especially since October 7th, and most recently with the nuclear weapons manufacturing, or with the bombing of Iran by President Trump. So there's a lot to get into. But let's just go ahead and start at the beginning. Tell me where you were born. Tell me about your family.
Yes, I'd be happy to. I was born in Tehran, Iran in 1947. And when I was 4 years old, my father was invited by the U.S. government to immigrate to America with his family, which would be my mom and my older brother and younger sister, as a family to come there, and he would work for the Voice of America, which he did work for them for 38 years before he retired. So he was an editor. He was a newspaper guy. He was an editor of the programs that got broadcast in every language around the world. So he would edit it, and then it'd get translated in all different languages, and then there would be someone who would read the items all around the world. So I grew up in Northern Virginia as a juvenile delinquent, I'm sorry to say, who was a perfect student in class and a teacher's pet. But outside of class, it was a different story. Run-ins with the police, and there were no consequences. The police didn't give me consequences, so I kept doing it. So I grew up in Northern Virginia. I graduated high school from Wakefield High School, which coincidentally was the high school President Obama gave a speech at. Across my home, the old building. They built a new building now. And then I went to UC Berkeley undergraduate. I got into drugs there, addicted to drugs. And then I went to University of Virginia School of Law, still addicted to drugs. And I finally had to flee to Iran as a fugitive because the crazy life I had and my drills and the stuff I did that were crimes, but just for the fun of it, I'd give the stuff away that it took. So, and in Iran, I went completely over the edge. I totally lost my sanity because of what I saw, the revolution, the executions, the deaths there. And people don't have an idea of how ruthless Khomeini was when he came to power. He seemed to enjoy bloodshed. And so I was there during the whole deal. I was always in the streets as an observer. I never participated in any of the demonstrations or protests there. I was just a curious guy who loved danger and risk and would go in the streets. So,
well, let me ask you a question, because you're kind of going all the way through the story, and I want to just go back a little bit. And that's a good overview. Then you go back to America, and we're going to go through all of that as well. But tell me, were your parents Muslim? If they were they Shia, or were they Christian? What was their religion?
Oh, we were born Muslim. All of my family was born Muslim. And there was an unusual marriage between my mom and my dad. You know, there's two major sects of Islam, Sunni and Shia. And my dad was Sunni, which is the minority in Iran. And my mom was Shia, which is the majority, 90% or more people in Iran at that time were Shia. and they never intermarried. Sunni and Shia never intermarried, and but they did. They were bound by,
convention
their
or
customs. And so I was born Muslim, but I had no religious upbringing at all.
really?
Yeah, nothing. I mean, when I was a senior in high school, I asked my mom and dad if they believed in God because, we weren't Christian. When I knew enough, we knew enough as kids. You don't go out and play in the streets Sunday morning because everyone's at church. It was frowned upon. This is the 50s and the 60s. And you didn't go out because everyone was at church, basically. And if you weren't at church, you stayed indoors so people wouldn't see you were in church. So no religious upbringing at all, really no moral upbringing because we were wild. I mean, my parents never gave me consequences for all the crazy stuff I was doing as a kid. So I kept doing it. And that's the importance of discipline. And it was really important to me after I grew up in Christ and became Christian.
Well, okay, that gives me good background. By the way, I got your book in a digital form, but it wasn't the whole book. And so I only have part of your story. So I didn't get to read the whole thing. So you grow up, you're a Muslim, but you clearly have no religious upbringing whatsoever. But at a very early age, you come to America with your father who works for Voice of the Martyrs. So at that point, Voice of America, I'm sorry.
There's a big difference.
There's a big difference. And so because you left so early, you probably have very few memories of when you were a child, and you obviously would not know anything about the culture and the lifestyle of Iranians pre the revolution in 79 at that point in your life.
Well, that is almost correct. My mom couldn't adjust to America. We came to New York City, which is the night and day culture shock between New York City in 1951 and Iran. My mom didn't know how to cook, because we had cooks in Iran. She didn't know how to change the diapers on my 4-month-old little sister. She didn't know anything. And she actually needed to go back to Iran. After we came to New York City, less than a year, I stayed there. And then my mom went back. I went back with her when I was 6 years old. And I was in Iran for a year and a half. So until I was almost 8, I was in Iran. So I saw Iran. I was old enough to remember when I was 6 to 7.5, almost 8.
What do you remember about Iran when you were 8 years old?
It was a beautiful country. And it was peaceful. People were happy. Of course, I didn't know anything politics, and stuff. But all I knew was that people were happy. It was peaceful, and it was a beautiful city, and it was just a lovely country. And I have good memories of Iran when I was young. And
you
then
can see it's a very beautiful land. It's very beautiful.
It is, and the people are very friendly and nice. Until things changed with the revolution.
Did you consider yourself, or do you think of yourself as Persian or Iranian? I mean, because sometimes I've noticed that when I ask somebody back in the old days when Iran, sometimes I would ask somebody, "Oh, where are you from?" And they'd say, "I'm Persian." And of course, I know Persian, Iran. And I got the feeling that sometimes they didn't want to say Iran because this is, decades ago. But I got that impression that some people didn't like to say I'm Iranian. And I didn't know if it was because of the revolution and the hostility and the belligerence towards America, or if it was because they were just proud of being Persian, which is an ancient name of a great civilization. So tell me about that.
Yes, I'd be happy to. You're right about after the revolution, and especially after the hostages were taken by Khomeini, Iranian, even my own cousin, he said, if people ask me, I'm going to say I'm Persian, not Iranian, because I got in fights. Now, there's chapters in my book after I came back from Iran and the hostages were being held. Strangers would come up to me in the street and say, "You from Iran?" And and they want to fight. So, but Persia changed its name in the 1930s to Iraq to symbolize a constitutional monarchy, the constitution. And Iran goes back, Iran comes from Aryan, but Persia goes back way into history. And so I can be Persian or Iranian. They're interchangeable these days because there's no hostility with riot on the streets.
I online, I watch a lot of what's happening with Iran, and I follow a lot of people who are dissenters and want this regime to come to an end. And they make a very pointed, and I think justifiably so, I think it's very important to them that they say, this is not Iran, it's the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's a regime that needs to come to end. It's a regime that usurped, the power in our country. And they just don't want to be associated with the Islamic Republic of Iran, and they call it the regime. And have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, I know that no one likes the regime except the people that benefit from it, who are the regime and at the top of the regime. I don't know. Persia, my dad was a big advocate for calling the country Persia and Persian. And he said because it has a long history and that there's
it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Persia.
I read my Bible and you're right there.
It is when God gave me that name, actually. Before I became a citizen, my name was Basmane Mohammed Zahnigar. And of course, no one could say or remember that name. I had the worst nicknames, man and woman and bathroom. And so I changed my name, and I don't know why. I didn't know God back then. And just the name Cyrus came into my head. And
what a great idea. That just came into your head.
It just came into my head. I'm Cyrus. It was chilling me. In Isaiah 45, it talks about Cyrus, not me, of course, the king. And it says, God, the Lord says, I have taken him by his right hand, even though he does not know me. I just don't know if that's the reason it came in my head that, God is telling me he has big plans for me. I believe I still have unfinished business in Iran. I want to, and
wonderful. We got to make a way for you, or Iranians, or the Persian, the counter revolution needs to make a way for you to go back. Do you have particular? Well, tell me this: when you, maybe I'm jumping ahead. Let's go back. Let's go back, and you came back to the United States. You went back with your mother because she just could not integrate or assimilate into the culture. It just was very difficult for her. New York City, coming from Tehran, night and day. So you go back until you're 8 years old. Then you came back to America?
Yes.
And why was it okay then for her? Did she take cooking school?
She learned how to cook. She learned how to care a baby. She learned all the domestic, because in Iran, there's always servants. They don't cost very much. They just live with the people that, they're servants of, and they just get food and maybe a little allowance. So she hadn't done any domestic stuff. She burned pots and pans in New York City. And so she went back. She actually became such a good chef and cook. People coming from Iran would specifically want her to cook special Persian dishes for her. So she learned how to do the domestic duties, and she could adjust. And she's a writer also. She was a writer. She was the first woman in Iran to have her own regular column in a newspaper. And it was one of the biggest newspapers, Kayhan. And so she was famous in Iran as a trailblazer. And she wrote articles. When she came to America, she was still working for Kayhan. She had a column called America Through the Eyes of Badri. Badri was her first name. And Kayhan was the biggest, most influential newspaper in the Middle East. Dr. Misbah-Zadeh was one of the founders. And he was like family from the village my dad was born in and grew up. And so there was connection there. He would always want to come to our house and have my mom's cooking. That's the only. newspaper. And of course, after the revolution, the mullahs took over all the business at all. And I was working for the English version of King Han. And when I was in Iran, and I was I proofread their articles because I
well, we definitely have to get there. I want to make sure that I exhaust you come back at 8. Did you come back to Virginia, Northern Virginia?
Yes. Because the Voice of America had moved from New York City to Washington, D.C. So Northern Virginia, Arlington, near Key Bridge, across from Georgetown University. That's where we only lived 3 years there. Then we moved to South Arlington, and I grew up.
Did you live out your life in America then until you were, of course, 18, and then going to high school or whatever age that was? I mean, to college. Did you live the rest of your life until you went back to Iran in 78 in America?
Yes. Well, I actually went back in 77 when I was 30 years old. This is after I did the Watergate burglary and gave the jewel.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Okay. We're going to button up this early life because it's too hard to stay there. So you went to high school, you're a juvenile delinquent, you've gotten all kinds of trouble. Your parents were not religious. They didn't discipline you, tell you right from wrong. To you, right was just doing whatever you could get away with.
Yes. Yes. If I got away with it, it was right. If I got caught, it was wrong. So I basically, from 8 to age 30, I was in America as a lawyer. And then when I went back to Dubai first for 6 months, when I fled America as a fugitive from American justice, then I went to Iran in March of 78, which was almost
No. I want to talk about Berkeley first.
Oh, Berkeley. Yeah, there you go.
I got to keep you reined in, Cyrus.
I'm happy to talk about Berkeley.
Tell me about Berkeley, because that is also one of the things that, my listeners or viewers would be interested in, because, of course, the radical leftist agenda of the elite universities has utterly transformed America. And you were there in what years?
66 to 1971. I should have graduated in 1970, but I was 2 units short because my best friend copied my final essay for American history word for word and turned it in. And so I got it incomplete in that class. So I had to go back one more year and take a class in Russian history to get the unit graduate.
Of course. So when you were there in Berkeley, you've been an outlaw all your life. What kind of trouble did you get into? And give me your impression of the university, the professors. Were they intentionally indoctrinating students in what I will just generically or broadly say is kind of anti-American, pro-socialist, or obviously they would be anti-war? What was it like there?
Well, actually, the professors weren't radical as much then. They had neither administration. It was the students you were talking about who were like that, who ended up being the professors.
Right.
They were my, the class that was there with me, and third year, the seniors, they were the ones that ended up taking over the university and other places where they got influence. So back then, the only weird professor I had was philosophy. And the first day he says, "Are you really there? Does this life exist?" And this, I said, "Well, what are we doing here?" We're not
like, can I go home now?
The one that was weird. The others, they were good. They didn't try to impose any kind of political or social view. And I took a lot
interesting. So
it was that grew up and became what you say.
In the late 60s, early 70s, Berkeley was still a good place to be. The students were radical. And of course, you were not. Did you ever consider becoming a devout Muslim? Did you ever read the Quran, memorize it, any of that?
Never. No, never. I mean, my dad, bless his heart, he took me and my older brother to the mosque. There's a famous mosque in Washington, D.C., only to learn Arabic. He wanted us to learn another language, to write it and everything, and Arabic. And my brother and I rebelled. We said, look, we go to school 5 days a week. We don't want Sunday to be another day of school. So after a couple of sessions there, he didn't take us any. He gave up because my dad, he wasn't a practicing Muslim. Neither was my mom. They didn't talk about it. I mean, when I was a senior in high school, 18 years old, I asked them, do you believe in God? They had no idea.
What'd they say?
And my mom said, of course I believe in God. And my dad said, I'm an agnostic, but he became a Christian. So later, after I became a Christian,
awesome.
They became Christians.
Wonderful.
Jesus fixed me. And they said, if he can do that, we want to be
if he can fix Cyrus Zal, then he can fix anybody. He's a good guy. So you graduate, then you go back to Virginia to get your law degree. And we'll kind of then, I guess, fast forward, you start practicing law in Virginia?
No, in California.
In California.
I never took the bar in Virginia. After Virginia, I went to Florida, took the bar, I passed it. So I started out in Florida as an attorney. And then I came back to D.C. My cousin and I had started import business from Iran, the handiworks of Iran. And we decided it wasn't going to take it. It was very successful for my second and third years of law school, where I never went to class and just took the final exams. So that business didn't work out. I came back to D.C. where I got into tons of trouble and finally had to flee the country.
Well, tell me, that's what I want to know about. Tell me about what bad stuff you were doing and why you had to flee to Iran. And you were practicing. Wait a minute. This just hit me. At the time, you were a practicing attorney?
I was, yes. And I was hoping to lose my license by doing all this crazy stuff, but God didn't let me. He kept me.
So tell me what you did. Give me a list of your crimes.
Well,
not the whole list. It's too long. Okay.
I'll just give you the part right before I left America.
Okay.
I went swimming in Lake Fairfax when swimming was banned because there were too many people there. So that was an arrest for trespassing. I kept the police busy for like 3 hours in case they didn't water, and all these other people were there that didn't go in the water. So and that's in the book. But the most serious thing I did was in the middle of the night. I had a fabric shop in the Watergate complex. My parents' shop. They were trying to find ways to fix me, and they had two branches of their fabric shop, one in McLean, Virginia, in a high class area, and one in the Watergate, which is the highest class area. So I had a fabric shop there, and in the middle of the night, I just went there and said, I want to break in one of these stores that are in the same place as my fabric shop. And it was outdoors because the water gets really strange. You can walk down. I don't know how it is now. This is 1977. I went down there. I bashed the jewelry store that was a couple of doors down from my store. I gave the jewelry to one of my gang members. I had a gang of kids who we raced around with, and she gave it to her mother. The mother gave it to the police. The police arrested me for the burglary, and I ran into a couple of other arrests. And so I said, I'm just going to get out of their reach.
So you were like the wildest man. You have a law degree. You went to Berkeley, graduated a year late, but you went to Berkeley, graduated. You have
Phi Beta Kappa.
Phi Beta Kappa. Then you go to law school. You pass your bar. You're an adult. You are no child, and you are living like a madman.
Because of drugs.
Because of drugs.
I was totally addicted to marijuana, and marijuana distorts your thinking. It makes you think things are cool to do when they're not, and it's just for the excitement. See, the thing is, I didn't have God.
That's right.
And there's a place in each one of us that God only can fill. And I was trying to fill these places with drugs. This place in me that was empty. I could feel missing something. I'd take LSD and say, maybe on LSD, the universe will make sense. But it doesn't make sense right now. I have no reason to live. You have no reason to, there's no meaning. And so I do these crazy things on drugs or alcohol. And I would think that's real cool and,
Your
everything.
parents must have been so brokenhearted over your choices.
They were absolutely tortured by my choices. And I lived with them. And even when I was away from them, they knew I was getting in trouble. I was so far gone that a outlaw motorcycle gang in Venice Beach recruited me to be one of their members. The Heathens of Venice Beach. They're like mini Hell's Angels. Like Hell's Angels, everyone knows that.
Right.
These are the Heathens of Venice Beach. And I was just curious to see what clothes.
You would just try anything. Nothing was off limits, and it was exciting, so you did it.
Yeah, if it was dangerous and exciting and the cheap thrill, which is, it's exciting, but there's a risk of real danger.
Of course.
To it. And I enjoy danger, can I say.
So the Watergate, 1977, you do all these different things. You break in and smash windows, and you get arrested. But were you out on bail?
Yeah, I got out on my own recognizance. This is
DC.
And that's when, when I was out on bail. In fact, my trial for another case, there was another case, a criminal case in Fairfax County, which is next to Arlington. It was supposed to start. I hired an attorney for that, and I was in the air out of National Airport. It wasn't Reagan Airport, 1977.
Mm-hmm.
The day my trial started in the criminal case, and my lawyer went there.
Fleeing justice. You're absconding.
Yes.
You were like, oh my gosh, on the run, an outlaw. You're an outlaw. Or what?
Yeah.
Oh my
gosh. The outlaw name as an alias when I flew out of D.C. But back then, you didn't need any ID or anything to fly.
You just get on the plane. Yeah.
I did. I gave him the name as Mick Warfy. Mick, because Mick belonged to the Rolling Stones.
I knew you were going to say that.
Later, the FBI came everywhere for me because the Watergate has a lot of political power. Right. And they wanted to catch a guy that fled, from justice. And they even went to California, where my sister lived, and knocked on her door and said, do you know where Cyrus is? And she said, I have no idea. And she didn't, because I didn't tell her.
Tell me this. Do you speak fluent Persian?
I speak almost fluent Persian because I grew up here. I have an American accent when I speak Persian, although it's getting better. When I grew up here, I'd forgotten Persian, except, the stuff you say in the house.
Right.
But the thing is, when we were kids, and it's the same today for Persians who come here with their kids, we speak English. We don't speak Persian. In front of our friends, we were embarrassed when our parents spoke Persian to us. Right now, I can speak Persian. I can carry on the conversation. I've even acted as an interpreter, and I go to a Persian Iranian Christian church, and when they need an interpreter for the service for someone that, English, I would interpret the Persian into English with it. Oh. So I can speak Persian passably, fluently, like a Persian,
right?
Because I have an accent.
Because you got an American accent, and you were already a citizen. What did you say? 75?
Yeah, 75 or 76.
So you're a citizen, and you're just a criminal. At least, though, you're not. And then we're going to go to Iran in this story. You're not. You don't hate America. This is pre-revolution, 78, 79 revolution. So there was none of this death to America, the great Satan, any of that. What about the Muslims that you knew either in Iran, that would be as a child, obviously, or here in America before you went back? Did you know Muslims that had that deep antagonism toward the West, toward the great Satan, America, any of that? Did you experience any of that in your life?
No, it didn't exist. Mm-hmm. I love it. I love America. At one time, I was a man without a country, because when I went to Iran, they knew I was American. I could hardly speak Persian, and they called me the American kid, especially when I got drafted into the military.
Oh, we got to talk about that. So, yeah. but at that time, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Iranians love America. there was fake news even back then. People, Iran, during the revolution, after revolution, death to America, it was all a show. There were people that were trying to go to America and get visas who were yelling death to America. When the news cameras came, they would pretend they're angry, because I was there. I was always out there, and they would say, "Man, America."
Say that
but it was
again. I want to hear, because I hear them say it on Friday nights in the parliament there, whatever it's called. How do you say death to America?
Mad America. Mad America.
Mad America.
Yeah, M-A-R-T.
Oh, Mark America.
And it's all of it is fake. The Iranians love America, the ordinary people. They loved it back then. They love it now. Back then, under the Shah, Iran was becoming more and more set. Islam was being pushed away. And because the Shah realized, to be a great nation, you can't be Islam. Sorry to say that. But because
don't be sorry to say that, because I think we need to talk about Islam always. I'm not talking about this conversation, but just always very matter-of-factly. We cannot be embarrassed to say, no state that we want to be in should be Muslim. We do not want America to be Muslim, and we don't want Iran to be run by Muslims, even though we're not saying they shouldn't have Muslims living in Iran. That's fine, but we don't want Islam to rule us. This idea of the Iranian people or the Persian people, I wanted to just stop and pause and say, when people talk about different kinds of cultures and different peoples, they will often say things, well, the Germans are this or the Japanese are that, and characterize them. I have found that Persians and Iranians, the average Joe, not, the regime, that the most frequent thing I ever hear is that they are just lovely, friendly, warm, inviting, kind people, that they love America. And it's such a dichotomy, because the image is, it's Mark America, right? And it is, did I say that okay? America. And like lunatics and vicious, bloodthirsty killers and lunatics that want to bring the Mahdi or the 12th Imam and wipe everybody, and then make all the infidel like me and you submit to Islam, which, God willing, that will never happen. So I just wanted to say that, because I think it's something you can't, say it too often, that the Persian people are lovely. And Iran, back in 79, when all this was going on, I remember thinking of it as, I don't know, this dark place, just, because it's the evil that you're feeling coming from a place. And it really settled in me that Iran was just like this dark and evil place. But I hear always of the beauty of Iran, just the natural beauty, the beauty of the cities, just wonderful. So yeah, that's the reality.
Yeah, let me address that. First of all, the dark that you felt was from Khomeini and the rulers, not the people.
Yes.
And did you know that there are great fruits from the Iranian Revolution for the kingdom of God?
Do tell me.
Because the Christian churches, Iran is one of the fastest growing per capita Christian converts right now. People got so fed up with Islam. The mosques are empty. No one goes. I mean, this regime drove everyone away from Islam. And so the fruit is there's a lot of souls that are saved. Their home churches, they meet, even though there's extreme risk for them. And if the Shah had kept on and secularized the country, no one would have thought about Christianity or Jesus or anything. So what's happened is God has brought fruit out of this revolution. in the home churches. They close all the churches because they know the biggest threat to them are Christians and people who believe in Jesus and who believe in God, because what's behind them, they're not our enemies, flesh and blood. We don't fight against flesh. It's the spiritual forces, evil in high places that are behind these mullahs and rulers. And they're the ones that know that the biggest threat to them is Jesus. So what's happening is all these convert Christians and even home churches, they risk their lives to meet in their homes and worship God.
I love that. And by the way, it's very well known in America. I think that if you're reading your scriptures and you know the heart of God, and you can just see what's happened to Iran. And for decades, I've been hearing praise reports of people in Iran that are even having visions, as all the Middle East Muslims having visions of the Lord, having dreams, being directed. I even heard a story once of a girl who had this dream or a vision of the Lord, and he said, "Go outside, get in a cab, ask him to take you here." I mean, all of these directions, she did it, and of course, she ended up coming to the Lord. Just amazing stories, and I've been thinking so much about this, the beauty of the natural outgrowth of being in submission under Islam, according to the most literal interpretations of the Quran, not the kind that they throw at us in the West. Oh, Islam is a religion of peace. But I mean, when you're living under that kind of rule, under the rule of Islam and Sharia, like in Iran, the Iranian people have been for so many years, there's nothing but rebellion that can come from that, and despising of that religion, and it's a political ideology as well.
Well, the problem is Islam reaches into every aspect of someone's life, personal, business, everything. It reaches and it controls every aspect. And if you don't do it, then you get punished severely, even physically. And I would think that the most effective ministry to Iran is called Iran Alive Ministries. They broadcast satellite 24/7. It's Iran Alive Ministries. It's headed by Pastor Hormoz, Hormoz, Shariat, Shariat. And I think he'd be a great guest for your podcast. He can tell you about the conversion. And, they broadcast directly into Iran through satellite. And, because of that, the government, the regime tried to ban satellite dishes, but people kept getting them. And so, right now, there's things happening in Iran spiritually that are wonderful. But, we don't hear about that because the regime, all the newsworthy stuff is with the regime. But there are things happening that...
And it's crazy, too, because I know about this. Obviously, you know about this. There is so much good in Iran that's happening in Iran, but the establishment media in America, why they have to twist and everything, even to the happy idea and the knowledge of that there is a fruitful, loving, wonderful population in Iran that is utterly opposed to the regime. That's a story to me. And anybody who just watches ABC, NBC, MSNBC and all that would know nothing about it. But it's a beautiful story. Redemption.
Yes. And I want to throw out a little item that might be newsworthy here.
Ooh.
I'm the crowd. I think God has unfinished business for me in Iran. But I'd like to go there as a special peace envoy on behalf of President Trump, because I'm totally American, totally Iranian. And I think it would be effective President Trump, I love the man. He's always thinking outside the box.
I know.
So, but I have no idea how to get my willingness to go to Iran on his behalf to the president.
Well, that is interesting because during the Obama administration and the Biden administration, there were so many infiltrators into the government of America from Iran. And, there's this agonizing quandary that we have here in America, because I know how much Iranians like you come to America and love America and want the best for America, and we do for them as well, of course. But then there's this other group that comes in and wants to infiltrate into our government and to influence policy and to turn America into a dupe of the Iranian regime. And it's so important that these people not be allowed to stay here, to become citizens, to become apparatchiks of the regime in America. And so, yeah. Have you ever met an apparatchik for the Iranian regime?
Well, Obama was the biggest enabler of Iran and its wicked goals. I mean, giving them cash,
by the palletful, billions.
Yeah, cash in every currency, not just dollars, but, euros, yen, and everything else. And it was, there are infiltrators from Iran, but they're not very good at it.
No.
They're not very good because, frankly, God is not with them.
God is not with them. He's not allowing them. That's not part of his plan. I learned something last night as I was reading this book over here, as a matter of fact. I did not remember that part, at least if this is an accurate accounting of it, that part of that deal that Obama was making with the Iranian regime set us up in a relationship that if Israel had gone to war against Iran, or I don't know if it had anything to do with the nuclear aspect of a war, but that America would be bound to defend Iran against Israel. Did you ever hear that?
I did not hear about that, but I wouldn't put it past Obama.
I know, is that crazy? I literally read headlines saying this, and I thought, I've got to delve into that because that went right over my head. But what a demonic spirit to have America ever be on the side of Iran against Israel.
Well, they would lose because God told Abraham, whoever blesses you, I will bless, and whoever curses you, I will curse. So I think that's still true today. That's why Israel is winning, because God is, even though a lot of Israelites, they don't believe in God, they're secularized, but God never goes on his promises.
But he says, not only in Paul, but one of my favorite verses is Isaiah 45, and I think it's 21. And in that, 24, in that he says, in Jehovah, or Yehovah, all Israel shall be justified. And then Paul, of course, says, and all Israel will be saved. And people seem to have this desire to not see that this is a theme from beginning to end. It is not just Genesis 12:3, where God says, those who bless you, I will bless, and he who curses you, I will curse. He says it over and over and over. Did you see that exchange between Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz?
No, I haven't. I've heard about it, and I read a summary, but I didn't actually watch it.
So many people, and I'm so glad to know, and I think that these Iranian Christians would be the same thing, because I don't think they will have the jealousy and covetousness of Israel like some Christians do, kind of bemoaning that they are still the chosen people. But God says, I will save thee with an everlasting salvation. And this is a repeated thing. And Ted Cruz just got eviscerated by Tucker, who was very belligerent and incredibly rude. He goes on afterwards, after he just shames or attempts to humiliate a sitting senator of our country. 2 weeks later, he's interviewing the president of Iran, who is one of the leaders who have been most responsible for the atrocities that happened in Iran against their own people. Did you see that interview yet?
You can see that, but I don't understand how or why Tucker's gone off the deep when it comes to Israel. He's gone off the deep end, and so what he says doesn't interest me anymore because I think he's lost his way.
Lost his way. But I will say this: let's pray for him and for evangelists and apologists to speak out the truth, because to me, when Tucker asked, I can't remember the president's name. There's so many presidents. I can't remember his name, but he's a monster. He's absolutely a monster. Okay. And he's, he does the shirt and tie thing because he's going to, or the jacket and tie thing, and he's going to look real Western. And Tucker says, when they chant death to America, what do they mean? And the guy says, oh, they don't mean death to America. I mean, that's noted, but they don't mean death to America. And I'm thinking, how many times do we have to have a Muslim nation, a leader, a terrorist say, we're going to destroy you, and we will kill you, and we will rape your women, and we will make you all submit to Allah and the Shia, before we believe it? What did he think death to America meant? What does it mean to you, Cyrus?
Well, if it's said by the regime, I take it seriously.
Yeah.
But if it's said by the ordinary people who don't mean it, but they're under some compulsion to say it, that it doesn't mean anything.
Oh, of course. I've heard about all those kids that every single day at school, they have to stand out in the yard, just like the kids in in Gaza, they have to repeat those kind of things.
Yeah.
And Turkey does it to their children. It's like child abuse.
Yes, it absolutely is. They raise their kids to be martyrs. That's terrible. I mean, that's
and it's not like a Christian martyr, is it?
Absolutely not. No. Well, but your viewers and listeners might want to be interested to know, how come I didn't lose my license, or how come I'm still an attorney?
Absolutely. Let's go back to that, because how'd you get out of going to prison and losing your license?
Well, it was God's hand. After I went to Iran, I felt bad, and I called the owner of the jewelry store where I did burglary, and I talked to him. I felt bad. I called him to apologize. And from Iran, I was in Iran, and he was in America, of course. And I said, I'm sorry that I didn't realize it have such a psychological trauma for you. And, I apologize. And he said, are you coming back? This before the revolution. Was actually working for a law firm in Tehran, an American law firm, the owner of who had graduated from University of Virginia School of Law, about 14 years before I graduated. So he knew. He said my name. He gets a list of graduates from university, and he hired me right on the spot because I'm Iranian and American, and the clients were American companies. And so anyway, I was working, and I planned to stay there. I didn't plan to come back to America. So he asked me. This is before the revolution.
So you planned to stay because you were afraid, or because you loved Iran?
Because I was making twice the money in Iran with no taxes. There's no income tax. And the U.S. income tax, there's a high level you can earn without any taxes because you're living in a foreign country. So it was a great setup. I mean,
you never even said, did you find the love of your life? Did you get a sweetheart in Iran or in America?
No, I was unmarriageable back then. I was not someone that someone could marry. I was completely gone. Even though I didn't get drugs in Iran until the very end, I found where connection for hashish was. But here's the deal. He called me and he said, are you coming back? I said, no, the job, I'm going to just stay. So I went to the American embassy. The reason the FBI couldn't find was because I used my Iranian passport under my Iranian to leave the country out of New York City, out of Idlewild JFK. And so they were looking for Cyrus Zal, and they couldn't find anybody named Cyrus Zal who flew out. I didn't have an American passport. I left this like hurry. So in Tehran, when I was there, I said, I better get an American passport. I needed an American passport. And so I went to the embassy, and I had a job near there at Iran Air, where I taught English to cadet pilots of Iran Air. English is the international language of pilots. And so I went to the embassy, and I noticed there were long lines of people there every day, long lines of Iranians trying to get a visa. I mean, they went down there were like 9 people abreast. It's a huge sidewalk outside the walls of the embassy. And there was an office that gave visas, non-immigrant visas, to people that applied. There were like thousands of people. I tried to find the end of the line, and you couldn't see the end. It went from blocks and blocks and blocks, and it was always there. And what was the reason Khomeini took the embassy was because the lines were slapped.
Shut up. I didn't know that. Was he wanted to...
You'll get to it. You can read all the details.
Well, I've got the book up here, and I didn't get to that because it was cut off.
To go back to why I didn't get in trouble. So the jewelry owner, they're holding his jewelry. I took 5 or 6 expensive pieces of jewelry from him. So I believe what happened was he went to the cops. He said, I talked to this guy. He's not coming back. I want my jewelry back. And so they gave him the jewelry. So there's no evidence for prosecution. I didn't know that. I found this out after I came back to America. I was arrested at JFK because I was on the wanted list under Cyrus Zal, and I had an American passport. And the guy that issued the passport to me was one of the people, 7 embassy people who took refuge in the Canadian embassy, and they were flown out. There's a movie about that. He signed my passport. He's the guy that issued Mark Lychek or something like that. So anyway, I come back and I called the court. I said, what into my case? And they said, it was dismissed. And the only reason it could have been dismissed, and that was the most serious charge. That was the one charge that could have kept me from getting licensed. And so when I applied to the California bar, they don't request how many times you've been arrested before. They only request convictions. And the only conviction I had was swimming in the lake.
So tell me how you come to the Lord.
Well, the Lord used one of the things I hated to bring me to him. And the thing I hated was cigarettes and cigarette smoke. And so when I went to Iran, I had no connection for drugs. And all my family members, they knew I was an addict. So they looked out for me, make sure he doesn't get a connection. And so I started smoking cigarettes because they make you dizzy. They give you a little buzz and that stuff, but I need it. And when I came back to America, I was still addicted to cigarettes, and I hated it. Of course, I was still using marijuana, LSD, and alcohol to an extreme amount. But the cigarettes I wanted to get rid of. So my sister, wherever I went, she'd send me a light. And if I moved, she'd send me another. And I never looked at them. I never opened it. I never looked at it. And so there was one there. I was in my parents' house.
Thank God for a faithful sister.
Yes, she kept praying for me when everyone gave a pot.
Oh.
And so I was living in my parents' home, a very expensive home in the most expensive place of Northern Virginia, Great Falls, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And it bothered me. I couldn't stop smoking cigarettes. So I was in my bedroom and bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and I said, because I knew my sister sent me cards, and she talked about Jesus, birthday cards, and it just knew something about Jesus was what she was talking about. But I never read the Bibles. I didn't know who Jesus was. So I just said, Jesus, if you're real, take away my desire to smoke. Right? And so as soon as I said that, I felt a physical sensation. I felt something, a shiver, a strong shiver, started at the top of my head. It went down my back spine, and it went out of my feet. It was like a physical sensation. Something went out of me. And I said, that was unexpected. What happened? And then I went to, I grabbed the Bible, the one that I'd never opened and read. And I started from Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And it spoke to my heart. This is the truth. This is what I had been looking for in all the wrong places. And I read, the creation and everything. I said, this is it. And I said, I wonder if that was the addiction that went out of my body. And so and my prayer, it was a request. I didn't know how to pray. My request was only cigarettes. I wanted to keep smoking marijuana.
Yeah, of course you did.
You know? So I said, "Is this real?" Lit a cigarette. I couldn't. It was, he just said,
Disgusted.
"Bro." Yeah. And the amazing thing was, I didn't go through nicotine withdrawal. I didn't go through any withdrawal. And because
Did you call your sister right away?
I did. I called her. And that's where my book ends, at my conversion. And I'm working on the sequel that is my life after my conversion till now. You know,
Is that when you found your girl, your future wife?
I never found her.
You never married? Oh my gosh!
Remember, I do have a daughter, and I have grandkids that they're here now, being very quiet and
oh,
so I do have children. I mean, I have one child. I have grandkids. Consider my children. They all live. My son-in-law, my daughter, everything. So I called my sister and told her the news, and she said, "Well, why don't you pray about what God is calling you to do?" And I said, "I did not pray." And she just asked God what He wanted you to do, and I did. And He told me to come to California and advocate for the pro-life movement and babies. And I did. So I moved from Virginia, California, and then
what year was this?
This is 1986. In
So
1986,
abortion had just been around nationwide since, for about 13 years.
Yes. And I was in law school when it happened, 1973. And some of the professors were very, very upset, saying, "This is my law school professor people. This is unusual that the Supreme Court would overturn a majority of states' laws on abortion and just, say it's legal."
They knew it wasn't constitutional, that it was a strange, bizarre decision.
It was emanations from the penumbra.
Penumbra. Favorite word, penumbra.
Yeah. It's not actually in the Constitution, but it's in the vapors that emit from the Constitution. That's what...
like passing gas. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like passing gas.
But then I came to America, and then Operation Rescue started in 88, 89, 90, where they would sit. Yeah, and so I was the attorney. I was the general counsel for Operation Rescue in all of California, and I went from city to city defending the rescuers. I left my private job in the law firm, and that's the next exciting things. I went to jail then too, but it was for a good cause, because they didn't want me to say the word baby and abortion when I defended these rescuers. And I said those words and got contempt for it. And
I've rarely seen anything like the injustice done to pro-lifers. And this goes back many, many decades. It's not just under Biden. It goes way, way, way back. My husband, when he was editor-in-chief of the Sacramento Union, wanted to see, he was obviously very pro-life. He actually always was, even though he was an atheist, or, he wasn't born again until college. And so, but he was always pro-life. He didn't understand how you could kill a baby. But, my husband had long hair down to here. He was smoking dope and doing all, by the way, you two share something in common, because in D.C., and whenever we pass by this one building that has all this plate glass on the first floor, like a storefront kind of thing, he said, "When I was 16, I threw a brick through that window when they were doing," and he ended up in jail, and his dad, but he was an anti-war protester when he was a little teenager. And so he went from radical to born again and loving the Lord and voting for Ronald Reagan and all those things, to the man he is today, which you can just see the Lord changing people's hearts and rescuing them from the depths of darkness.
Yes.
Like
praise
you.
God.
And praise God, for my husband, it was just his birthday. And I said to him, "Honey, what would I be without you? I mean, we are just," and I said, "Just think about God turning your life around, and then I could meet you." And yeah, wonderful. So let me go back to so God literally grabbed your heart. I'm assuming you were always pro-life, and in college no.
Fortunately not. I didn't know enough about the issue. I was riding in the car, driving with my sister, and she said, "Well, what do you think about abortion?" And I said, "It's a woman's right." And she said, "What about the baby?" I became pro-life.
You're teachable. Your heart. No,
Yes.
but see, that's where anything we can look back in our lives, and we can obviously see it more easily in others, that when we are just stubborn, that is a true rebellion against God. But but when you became pro-life, when she said that, it's because your heart was open to truth.
Well, because I never thought about the baby. And so, because they're, brainwashed a lot. The people that advocate has never thought about it very deeply or analyzed it. And, when I was doing the trials, protecting the rescuers, there were babies born. I was in a trial where this was a civil case. I don't know if you remember when there was a sit-in at the Sacramento abortion clinic and they got sprayed with the mace and stuff. The police sprayed them. We did a civil trial where we sued the city for the police action. And there was two attorneys for the city, a lady and a guy, and they both had kids born to them during this trial. Because they saw the pictures, they saw the aborted babies, and the same thing happened in Chico. The prosecutor in the criminal case of the rescuers, she got pregnant, and she had a baby too. And so I think there were even children alive still because of the trials and people getting exposed to what abortion really is.
Right. The more they attack us, even today on different issues, attack truth and justice and the Constitution and all the rest, the more they expose the depths of the depravity of their ideas and ideologies. Wait a minute. It's something that just hit me. I started to say, Joseph went down to an abortion clinic as the editor-in-chief of the Sacramento Union, just to kind of see, just to observe what was going on. And this big, fat, no offense to heavy-set people. I mean, actually, I've got quite a few pounds on me. But anyway, this big, fat lesbian, I think he's called her, shaved head or something like that. And she came up to him, and he had his hands in his pockets. He's just standing there. And she starts beating him. She's this huge woman, hitting him with her fist, and he's standing there with his hands in his pockets. And she's saying, as she's doing it, "Stop hitting me. Stop hitting me. Stop hitting me. Help, help." As she's beating him, the cameras. Anyway, he was charged for that. And did you represent him?
I don't think so. No, I didn't represent him, but I know who the person you're talking about because she was in some of the cases.
Oh.
I know, and she was found passed away in her apartment not shortly after these events. Dina or something was her name. She was.
I'll tell Joseph.
Yeah, she worked with Shauna Heckard, was the head of the abortion clinic, the feminist center in Sacramento, and Dina, I think her name was Dina, was her enforcer, so to speak.
Oh yeah, she was good at it. Well, let me just go. Let's end with this couple of questions I have about the Iranian Revolution.
Yes.
You went back. You must have been coming back at a time when there were, there's a feeling in the air. Everybody knows things are happening. Had the revolution, had Khomeini come from, I think it was Paris at the time, or had he'd already gotten to Iran?
No, what happened was, the U.S., the Shah, well, the American, Jimmy Carter, President Carter, and his people, they gave him the advice that would drive him from his own country. They gave him the worst advice. and he ended up leaving Iran, and this was in, I think, January of 1979. And then that opened the door for Khomeini to come from Paris. Khomeini didn't come. And at that time, there were many groups that were involved in the revolution. Secular groups, National
Communists.
Communists. There was the Tudeh party was communist. There was the Mujahideen South, which is the guerrilla young folks. There were lots of groups. Khomeini was just one of many, but he was the figurehead of all of this. He would send cassette tapes from Paris, smuggle them in Iran, and they would play these at the mosque, the mosque. And so he was like the figurehead of the revolution. And so everyone was for him when he came, but he suppressed all of the other parties until they fled. He was the only one left, and he did it ruthlessly with executions and murders and everything. So that was how Khomeini came. The vacancy, the vacuum created by the Shah leaving.
And Jimmy Carter, I don't think that there's anything that you could say about Jimmy Carter's role in all that is a positive thing. He essentially, and the Shah, of course, was autocratic. He had his secret police and all this, but would you say, but here's where the hand of the Lord is. You brought this up. The hand of the Lord is the Shah was out, Khomeini in, but the Iranian people are moving further and further out of Islam. I have read a survey taken. Of course, they say the Iranian regime says that it's 99.5% or 99% Muslim. But I have seen other studies or surveys that say that Islam is down to 40% of the population, and that it's not just Christians, but atheists and other, agnostics, whatever, are the balance of the 60%.
Yes. Well, the regime drove out the minor religions, Baha'i and Zoroastrian, the Jewish, of course. That's why, they're all gone. You'd be killed if you were still there in any of these minority religions.
Mm-hmm.
And people are moving away from Islam. People are moving away from Islam. Some of them are finding the Lord, because they have visions or dreams, or they look, they see the satellite TV of Christian broadcasting. And so I would say, I don't think even 40% of the people, the ordinary people, are still considered themselves, self-identify as Muslims. Because if they were 40%, you'd still have some people going to the mosques on Sunday.
Because they're all empty. They're just empty, the mosques in Iran.
Wants to go there and worship a God that kills everything.
And puts acid in the face of girls that don't wear the hijab and the niqab and all that. There's the son of the Shah that would like to go back to Iran after the regime comes down, not before. Then there's that radical group, the Marxist group, and I'm trying to remember, you just mentioned the name, the Mujahideen.
Mujahideen.
Yeah, Ahad. And they want to go back, but they say they're no longer radical. They're not Islamists. They're the blah, 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 blah. I don't know one way or the other.
The people that group, when that group sided with
Iraq
against the war, you go against your enemy, your country's enemy, and again, and they lost all credibility after that.
So what is Cyrus Zal's great prognostication? Who should lead and rule, or what kind of government? Who should lead Iran? What would be your pick, at least?
Well, I would say whoever God chooses to lead Iran. And in the Psalms we have, God chooses the leaders of the country, brings one up, puts one down. So I would say whoever God wants will be the leader. And I don't know who that is. And I don't know if that's going to be a constitutional monarchy, a straight republic, or something else, but God knows. And
what a glorious day that will be.
Yeah.
Can you just imagine Because if you think about all the Christians that are there now, and by the way, you probably know better than I, but so many people that leave Islam go straight into atheism for a time, a season.
Yeah.
Because they just got to be like, I don't want to do this God thing anymore. I've seen enough of Allah, right? And they think it's the same God as the Christians. And we know that's not true.
Yeah, of course.
So then they meet Christians and that love them and want to teach them and draw them to the Lord. And
yes, that's what I'm hoping for more and more of.
Oh my gosh.
Lord,
and Israel would be such a happy thing because the Israeli people and the Iranian people love each other.
They do. Absolutely. And they've had such connections in the Bible. I mean, Esther was married to the Persian king who saved all the Jews that were going to be exterminated. Haman. Mm-hmm. We have Mordecai, her cousin or uncle. There's a statue in Hamadan, Iran, for Mordecai, for this Jewish. Yeah. I mean, because of their connection, of course, Cyrus, the Great sent the Jews back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple.
I know, what a lovely thing. He was confronted with the scriptures predicting exactly what he would do.
So Iranians and the Jewish people have a close connection through history. And ordinary Iranians always loved Israel and the Jewish folks. And there used to be a fairly large minority population of Jewish folks in Iran. But of course, they had to leave because they'd be killed if they didn't. So I'm hoping that connection becomes strong again between Iran and Israel. And
Israel could, imagine, this, the scripture that God says, I will be a wall of fire around you, Israel. Or Jerusalem, just a wall of fire. And I think I have not even seen one person do a meme because the Ayatollah says he's putting a ring of fire around Israel. And I say, no, brother, it's God who's putting a wall of fire around Israel and protecting her. And I get shivers just right now thinking about all the Iranians here and the Jews here, and the Jews in Israel, and the Iranians in Persia, or the Persians in Iran, and this glorious day, if they should fall. We should pray for that every single day. And then you're going back, and you're not finished with your homeland.
Well, I think God has unfinished business for me there. And by the way, can we plug the book that I wrote?
Yes, as a matter of fact, because I am the most bad at plugging things, even my own self. And I'm always doing that. And it's Twice Dead, Once Saved, which I love the title.
Yes, Twice Dead, Once Saved. It's available on Amazon.com. And I'd love to have feedback on the book from whoever gets it and reads it and writes a review. I think it'll bless and encourage people to consider the Lord. Those that don't know the Lord, I think it will bless them to consider, well, maybe there is something to this Jesus thing and to the Lord thing. So, Twice Dead, Once Saved, Amazon.
He saved you. And that wasn't a small feat.
No, consider death. I should have been dead in Iran, and the crazy things I did. Yelling death to Khomeini in the streets of Tehran.
See, we got to close, but we keep every time I tried to go back to Khomeini, somehow we end up off. So you were yelling death to Khomeini during the revolution?
Well, after the revolution. And started killing this is like 3 or 4 months after the revolution, when everyone still liked Khomeini. They didn't know how he would turn out. I was in the streets of Tehran for over an hour. I yelled as loud as I could, death to Khomeini, and join me in saying death to Khomeini. I had various reactions from people. Some college students thought I was with Khomeini, I was trying to catch anyone who comes and joins. I would be gone. And then some people wanted to fight, and I tell them, if you want to fight it, it's to the death. I'm ready to die for it. Are you ready to die for what you're saying? And they would not be ready because they
Was that just because you were crazy, or was that because you had conviction?
I was crazy and because I was enriched. I was totally insane.